My husband, Harry Seymour, we graduated from The Ohio State University in 1971. We sent out about 25 applications and two places responded. Howard University, which was our alma mater, and actually that's where we wanted to go and develop and start a new program in communication disorders. And the other place that responded to the call was UMass Amherst. So we interviewed in February 1971, and it was cold. It was so cold. We came totally unprepared. I was stuffing newspaper in my coat to keep me warm and wrapping newspaper around my head because I didn't bring, I just didn't bring the right clothing. Furthermore, at that time, I was 3 months pregnant. So they interviewed the both of us. And one of the things that stuck out in our minds was that whenever we went to an interview, there was a Black presence. And we found out later that this Black presence was one of three faculty members who were on campus at that time. Those three people were Bill Bromry, Bill Darity, and Fred Tillis. And so whenever there was a meeting where people were interviewing Harry and myself, one of those guys showed up. We found out later that they were there to make sure that the process was supposed to go the way it was supposed to go, and also to give us physical and visible support when needed.
Yes.
And I've never forgotten that. I mean, and I mentioned these three guys, these three important faculty members, these three giants in each of their fields, because they were always there in my shadow, supporting me throughout my entire career as a faculty member and as administrator. So it all started with role modeling. And I'll tell you, those were the best three role models that I could ever have. There were a couple of things that happened to Harry and myself as faculty. One, in terms of student evaluations, I remember reading them and remember seeing comments about my hair. People always want to know why I would wear a scarf or why, my hair was in that particular style. I can't even remember what my hair looked like. I may have straightened it at that time, and I'd probably use the scarf as a bandana or something like that. But there were a lot of comments about that scarf that I used to wear on my head. We also were able to do research about Black students, Black children in particular. That was one of our major interests, the speech and language behaviors of Black children, because so many school systems were putting Black kids in programs for special needs or describing them as retarded based upon how they spoke. Now, these children were speaking the language of their community. And most children do that. White kids speak the way the white people talk in their community. Black kids do the same thing. But that doesn't mean there's anything the matter with their intelligence. We were able to get one of the first articles published about the development patterns of Black children and the impact of the community on their speech. Yes, they spoke with a Black dialect. That's okay. The department nominated me for chair, and there was a lot of behind the scenes discussions about my being the chair. They said, "Oh, Charlena, we really want you to be the chair. We think you'll make a marvelous chair. You're prepared. You're a good role model, blah, blah, blah. However, we think you should have an advisory committee. And basically, there will be three people who will tell you what to do, and you do all the scut work." How's that? Let me go and talk to the dean about this. So I went in there and I talked to Dean Darity and I said, I've been nominated by the department and I think I'm going to be the chair. And they've suggested that when I become chair, that I have an advisory committee of 3 people. He said, stop. And he got up out of his office, took me down to the department, called a meeting of the department he knocked on doors as he was walking down the hallways and said, and I'm following him. And he said, Charlena Seymour, I'm pleased to say, is going to be the next chair of the Department of Communication Disorders. And she will have all the rights and privileges of any chair, which means that she does not have to have an advisory committee. And thank you. The chair is the one who is responsible for the direction of the department with consultation from the faculty, not advisory about what to do and how you do it. I enjoyed being the chair. And then all of a sudden, a new position comes up on campus. And this was dean of the graduate school. I love being the graduate dean.
Yeah, why didn't you leave good alone? Why didn't you let?
Oh my God. I was at a conference in Kenya and all of a sudden a guy was walking by holding up a sign calling my name. And
yeah, you and I were upstairs having lunch.
Yeah, Dr. Charlena Seymour. And I said, that couldn't be, but that's me. So I said, what do you want? He says, it's a phone call for you upstairs. So I went upstairs and on the other end of the phone was Marcy Williams. And I almost had a heart attack because I thought she was going to tell me something about my family. And she said, I've been trying to reach you. First of all, I just want you to know everything's okay. They wanted someone to serve as provost immediately. So I said, well, I don't know. I've got to talk this over with Harry. And I mean, this is a big change. I'm caught off guard. I then came back to you and I said, Esther, don't tell anybody. But Marcy just asked me.
I remember that.
Yes. I was interested in being the provost. Then I went and I met with David and Marcy to find out what was going on. And they explained that they really needed somebody immediately. And they felt I could do the job. They said, nobody knows you are on the radar screen for this job. We will keep it a secret. And they said, this is how it's going to be rolled out. We're going to have a meeting. We're going to call all the campus together. David at that time will have stepped down. Marcy will be the interim chancellor, and she's going to announce the interim provost. A couple of weeks later, the provost had left the campus and people were mumbling about who's going to be the next provost. Yeah, you know, I would go to the dean's meeting and hear them talk about, oh my God, who are they going to pick? Do you think it's going to be X? Do you think it's going to be Y? Do you think it's going to be Z? Are they going to bring somebody from off campus? I mean, I'm sitting there just, you know, looking out the window, listening while they are plotting and planning who should be the next provost. And then they started to give a list of names that they were going to send to the chancellor and then to the new chancellor. And also they were going to send it to the president's office about who they felt should be the next provost. So I just said, oh my God, let me get out of here quickly. And I didn't say anything the whole time. And nobody ever asked me my opinion. You know, who did I think might be the next provost? Or what did I think about? Yeah, nobody asked me. So the day of the meeting, I saw people gathering, and I walked over with people, and everybody went into the room to hear Marcy make the announcement about you know, what's going to happen on campus and who's going to be the next provost. And then the trumpets blared. Da, 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 da. Marcy said, now I want to give you some background information about the next provost. And she started talking about the credentials of this person, blah, blah, not in detail, but in general. So, I mean, you would have thought that, my God, who is this super duper woman? And then she said, would Dr. Charlena Seymour please come down? Because I was outside, I wasn't even in the room. And I walked down the aisle, and I don't know whether people were some were applauding, people were gasping. I mean, we needed smelling salts.
It was a moment. I was there. It was a moment, I'll tell you.
I mean, they didn't, I mean, the deans in particular, and there was an old guard there. There was an old guard of deans, and they were just undone about that announcement. So I walked up to the platform, up to the podium rather, rolled out my speech, gave my speech, which was about 5 minutes, and focused on what were going to be the next steps, said thank you very much, and sat down as the provost. And that's how it all got started. The first thing I recognized why this was different was not only the responsibility, but all the resources that went with it.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the key. I looked at the budget, I saw the money, and I saw that I was responsible for distributing it. And also that the only person between me and the budget was the chancellor. And the chancellor, God bless him, said, and David and Marcy and John Lombardi, they all said, just tell me what you need. They were all very, very supportive of me. So once I got those resources, then, I mean, this is a key position. You really shape the academic image of the campus. And
Yeah.
I knew where I put that money, those places would evolve, and where I didn't put money, they would have to figure out a way to survive. And it became obvious to me who did not have a record of getting money. And it also became obvious to me that there was a lot of cronyism, that, that the pals of the provost did well. And and it wasn't totally merit-based. So that was an eye-opener for me. And I said, I've got to do something about this. So there were people who were upset because they had come to collect their monies and they weren't going to get the same amount. They'll get something, but not to the extreme that they had been treated before. There was one thing that happened while I was provost that I have to talk about. Dealt with the faculty of color. There was a young woman. I think I had been in the office 2 weeks when a young woman came into my office and said, I'm following due process and I have an opportunity to appeal the tenure decision. And she said it had gone through 3 levels, and 2 levels, I think, 2 levels had turned her down, her department and the dean, and her school had supported her. And her case was at the provost's office, but the provost hadn't made a decision yet. So the decision was now in my hands. So I reviewed the case, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why there was any problem with it. And this woman had outstanding research and scholarship credentials. She was an excellent teacher, and her service was also outstanding. I don't want to go into too many details about it, but let's say that race and gender played a strong role, in my opinion, in the decisions before me about this case. And they were so blatant about their feelings about this young woman that there were comments in her case that should not have been there. I mean, it was just wrong. And after I reviewed it, and I had my staff review it as well, I supported her. And what happened was the department and the dean was so unhappy. Someone from her department sent her dossier to the Chronicle of Higher Education, claiming that the only reason this young woman got tenure was because the Black provost gave it to her. Oh, the Black provost and the Black interim chancellor. That was not true. I'm proud of my accomplishments, and I'm proud of the people that I work with, and I'm proud that I had an opportunity to do things for Black people, because that's what I am.